Hello, everybody, and welcome back to China Talk. We had our very first episode a couple weeks ago talking about the Overwatch League, but things are getting a bit more exciting when it comes to Chinese Contenders. So tonight we're definitely looking forward to discussing more of that. But first of all, we have to definitely thank Vowels for making it through tonight after. Gosh, you have to tweet out what your computer looks like right now because it is.
Let's not.
It's a disaster.
There's a few people who might have some quite angry words. Basically, I have been saving up for quite a while, and in 2 weeks now, I'm finally going to be able to buy a new PC. My current PC decided, you're getting rid of me in 2 weeks, so I'm going to stop working. So,
we were testing some stuff out earlier. You know, he had some notes from Doc Brown. He was, tinkering with a flux capacitor,
88 miles,
gigawatts.
88 miles.
I'm not entirely too sure what kind of HDML code he's, flipped with his computer, but the coils are all tightened and he wrenched it all down. And
I think the word was like USB tethering, and I was like, I don't know what that is.
We've had to improvise to get this going tonight.
me and Kenobi, we were talking before the show, and I live in a perpetual state of Papega, so I don't know what any of that stuff means. I don't know if you've seen any of my other shows, but anytime anybody asks me about anything math related, which I know Vowels is quite proficient in, it just goes completely over my head. I was asked the over-under today, and I just decided I was going to give the odds of a match 10-1. And yeah, because I'm intelligent and stuff.
When Vowels talks about math, it's just like
I still didn't hate the odds, but it was just like, I don't know where you're going with this, so I don't know. Here's $100. I didn't get the
I'll take $100 if you
I'm just a perpetual idiot.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like when I saw that picture, Vowels, I felt like almost donating a new computer to you.
Go fund me for Vowels' computer.
Exactly, and we could
again. I've planned this out. In 2 weeks' time, my student finance is going to come through, and I'm going to have the money to finally get a new PC. It's just
the state's paying for it. Is that what I hear?
No, well, what's going to happen is my student finance is going to come through, which is meant to be my rent for the next 5 months, and that's going on a PC instead.
Okay.
So then I have 5 months to find rent, but
you'll cross that bridge when you get to it. You got the computer.
Online poker. Am I right, kids? Esports. That's always the default. We just go to
get some odds from Volamel. Just go get some. Get some money.
I definitely do not have a past in poker or blackjack, but going into talking about Chinese Contenders, I definitely would want to play against Volamel. That's all.
Dude, I'm horrible.
I will say.
I will bluff you to no end.
Thank you for letting me know. But playoffs are coming soon. Yeah, for Chinese Contenders. Kenobi, you've been casting this entire season. Why is this a surprise to you?
No,
what matchups?
He also leaked it in another Discord when it was happening.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Definitely leaked it. Big leak boy. As reported by Kenobi Overwatch.
But definitely, Kenobi, as a caster, which matches are you looking forward to casting and seeing in general?
Well, casting I have my schedule, so I don't get to decide that. But when
I'm not going to leak that one either.
No, we're not leaking that one.
Allegedly leaked, to be fair. Allegedly, in my dreams, in game.
You through the ether. I went to Volamel in his dreams, like Freddy Krueger style, and be like, "This is the leak," and then
I feel left out.
He told me the dates and everything.
Yeah. So there are 2 teams I would actually really like to, actually 3, because it's interesting for China that we have now a moment where there are 3 teams who can really try and contend for the title. Because for the past few seasons, it's always been, you had Lucky Future Zenith, who is like, who's going to beat Lucky Future Zenith? And then last season, you had T1W, who is undefeated, and it was, the idea was, who's going to beat T1W? This season, I think there's a lot more parity. There's 3 teams that I think have a genuine chance of winning the title, which I think is LG, Huya, Billy Gaming, and T1W. I think are the 3 that have the best chance to win. And, we could talk about the odds of which one is better, but I think those 3 teams have at least a shot to get to the title game.
And this set of playoffs means so much more, especially for those top 2 teams. Volamel, what's at stake?
Well, if you get top 2, China has 2 seeds for the Pacific Showdown, so that's going to be the premier scouting grounds this year. We haven't heard much news BlizzCon related, let alone World Cup related, so that won't be the de facto place where everybody gets to see talent that they would normally see in high level competition within the international tier 2 kind of ecosystem. So these showdowns not only feed into a bigger event that will be happening at the end of the year called the Gauntlet, which is going to be the kind of the League of Legends World Championship, if that makes sense. So all the best teams from all the best regions will compete in a sit-down, blowout competition, which is not only going to be super hype, but it's going to show teams going into season 3 of the Overwatch League what talent's out there and who they should be scouting for. And it's getting, the showdowns lead into that, so it's just the beginning of the scouting season, and it's super important for these teams to get there and showcase what they've got.
Yeah, so Vowels, who else would be joining the top 2 from Chinese Contenders at the Pacific Showdown?
So you'll have the 2 top teams in Korea, which is Runaway and whoever loses to Runaway in the finals. And then the top team from Australia and, it's Australia or Oceania. The top team from that Contenders region and the top team from Pacific as well. Looking forward to the show now, actually. I'm definitely interested in how Australia and Pacific do, because we learned recently that the teams that don't perform as well on the showdown start losing gauntlet spots. So there's a lot of pressure on, I think, the top team from those regions to try and perform so they don't end up missing out on that spot, and their region still has some representation at the be-all end-all gauntlet at the end of the year.
So who's going to make it? Who's going to be the top 2 for China, do you think?
I think T1W is a solid one.
Yeah, their bracket's free.
Looking at how the bracket is shaked out, LGD might pull some LGD magic.
They always find a way.
That's what LGD does, but I think T1W is a lock on that side of the bracket to reach finals, and then other side, it's going to come down to the 2 top academy teams we've seen. LGD Huya with Haker, this amazing Sombra Goats, versus Billy Gaming, who were a team we were hyping up as kind of a spiritual successor to Flag Gaming with a couple extra pieces. It's going to come down to those 2, and that's semi-final. But assuming there's no big upset, we don't see 666 Legends or Team CC sneaking through, that semi-final between Team Huya and Billy Gaming might actually be more interesting than the eventual grand final, because that's not only going to be fighting for the final spot, but again, that Pacific Showdown spot.
And you were mentioning the Sombra Goats. Can you kind of give us some background into some of these top teams? So T1W, it's we found out what that stood for a little bit earlier last season, and I know, Vowels, that made you quite happy.
The one winner.
The one winner. T1W rolls off the tongue better.
Yeah, it does.
But what makes that team so likely, in your eyes, to make it to that Pacific Showdown?
I feel like T1W kind of just plays with a chip on their shoulder, which is something I can definitely appreciate. They're not an academy team. They don't have the funding. They aren't signed, but they still kick butt. And we've seen last season it was the Micha show playing this incredible Doomfist, and they didn't really need to play much else. They did occasionally move on to just standard goats, and Micha had a serviceable Zaya, definitely picked up this season. It kind of has similar comparisons to LG, who you're playing on Haker Sombra, but we can get onto that later. T1W though, yeah, I feel like how T1W plays as a whole is better than the sum of its parts. I've been high on a lot of T1W players. I think Hybe on that Diva is someone who's a little bit underappreciated, but if you take piece by piece each of the individual players on T1W, you don't actually expect... They're not players I would certainly expect to be able to perform at this level, but something magical just happens whenever they play together for whatever reason, and they are this Academy Slayer, Giant Slayer team.
What will be kind of interesting if T1W and LGE do make it to the finals, which
I think
my take is that they probably will, is we'll be kind of seeing a clash of brothers. Micha, formerly under the name Schweigo, and Haker used to play for this open division team that kind of innovated. I wouldn't say innovated, but popularized would probably be a better term. This very much heavily Doomfist invested composition. I think it was like a triple DPS, like main tankless.
Yeah, you
double support.
Yeah, we saw
like
teams using
Doomfist
the
main
Doomfist
tank, quote
as
unquote.
like it was a pseudo main tank because you dived in, you went in with Isaiah personal barrier. That's an extra however much HP. By the time that bubble wears off, he's got his shields up. By the time the shields go down, he's got movement abilities. He can get out again if he hasn't.
And if need be, there's sometimes a brig thrown in that composition as well. So you have armor pack on top of all of the shielding, all of the survivability, on top of the movement ability that just the character innately has. So it'll be kind of cool to see those two face off. Both very much standouts on that team. Those probably were the two players. I think their Zen was actually really good too. I think his name is New, but yeah, it's a fun little narrative to keep track of. Who from Ambitious Immortals, continues the reign or actually gets their first title. Be kind of fun to kind of keep an eye out for. But yeah, I think T1W LG are pretty much locked in. Maybe Billy makes a dark horse run, but I don't see them.
Yeah, Billy, a lot has to go right, I think, for them to make this dark horse run, and the way that it goes right is they have to... I think the barrier for them is if they're able to get over the hump that is LGE, because they did play each other in next to qualify for the next, LAN, and LG, pretty convincingly won the majority of that game. They had one blip where they lost the...
I think they hiccuped on Watchpoint Gibraltar?
Yeah, I think it was Watchpoint or something like that, a payload map, but... They had that one hiccup, but besides that, it looked very convincing for LGE Huya. It seems like Billy didn't really know how to deal with a lot of the Sombra coming out from Haker. And the one team that I have seen that deals with it very well or not very well, but better than the most, I think, is T1W. And I think T1W is kind of their kryptonite in a way, if you want to think it like that. Because I think LGE, me and Volamel were talking about it, like we were just chatting about who we think, how Showdown's going to go, and Volamel said that he thinks that LGE is the better team, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think LGE is the better team overall, but stylistically, it feels like
they get beat by T1W. I think
T1W has a very good understanding of what to do into Sombra goats and their iteration of it. I expect LGE to probably do better at Showdown than T1W for that reason. But yeah, I think when put to task against other teams that aren't as familiar with running against Sombra or a little bit weaker at goats, they're going to have a harder time, whereas T1W has different looks that they can throw out. They are they definitely can do that, and maybe we'll see a return to the Doomfist for China. That definitely could be a possibility. I think T1W is the more complete team, at least when it comes to China, but I don't know that they're going to be able to gimmick out some of the other Showdown teams, especially from Korea. We saw this in the next qualifiers. It was pretty not surprising, at least for me, but we saw kind of a strange dichotomy take place where LGE beats Genji, which is kind of the second seed in Korea at the moment, and then T1W loses to Genji. And it's pretty surprising when we look at the matchup, the head-to-head. I don't know if we want to get into predictions, but I don't know that this is going LGE's way when it goes to the finals. I think this is probably a T1W.
I think so too.
Really quickly, both of you have been mentioning the next tournament.
Sure.
Vowels, for those who don't know, can you kind of explain what the history is? What's the purpose of this tournament? Who's in it, etc.?
So next is I think twice yearly. We have
spring and winter.
Yeah. We had summer and winter last year.
Oh, my mistake. You're right.
Spring. So I feel like it's 2 a year. That's how it's worked out so far. But yeah, this is the third next tournament. It generally pits top 2 Korean teams against a collection of Chinese teams. You have a little group stage qualifier earlier on. That's what we've just gone through, the spring qualifier, to determine 4 teams moving on to the main event later on in the year. And we haven't actually seen the brackets, but we know that it's going to be Genji and Runaway, those top 2 Korean teams, and T1W and LGE, who we reckon are the top 2 Chinese teams, going at it start of June time. So we've just come out of the group stage for that. It was quite interesting because the 2 Korean teams who qualified to the group stage, all the Chinese teams had to go for a wildcard round after that.
Team kill.
I think Genji in particular didn't look as strong as we expected. No, I think a lot of people do expect Korean teams to be a step above
on average,
a clear gap. That's what we saw from Next last year, and that's what we certainly saw from Runaway, only dropping 1 map in group stage. But Genji, it was a lot closer. They did actually lose to LGE Huya. Again, we talk about that being a very interesting matchup. They did finish first in the group because they had the head-to-head matchup over T1W, but it was pretty close. So that's definitely something to look forward to heading into the main event.
Absolutely. And so when Next will eventually come in June, was it? Or is it July this year? June? Okay.
June. It is June 13th, I want to say, 13th. It starts off.
I wouldn't be shocked if there's maybe even a new hero coming out, but in every single major tournament in Chinese Contenders, we've been playing on that single patch throughout that main season. And now there's been a bit of a patch change going into playoffs. So what changes have been made to the patch that might impact the ultimate results of Chinese Contenders playoffs coming up?
I think one of the biggest changes is the way that displacement works on a lot of the heroes. So the many boops, the many displacement tools have seemingly become just better across the board. And instead of nerfing them, they've just kind of standardized how they all work instead of giving them their own physics, it feels like. And that's kind of done a lot more than people would expect. I think that's almost like a small bug fix you'd see on a patch, and it's like, oh, cool. Look, Soldier has more damage now, and Sombra has like this weird, if I hack a health pack, it's half time now instead of full time on the cooldown. And wow, armor's reworked, but this small little fine print has actually impacted the game quite a bit from my understanding.
Yeah. Going back to the days where it is hell on earth to play main tank.
Yeah.
Unless you're Winston.
Well, yeah, and then Winston's got some nice buffs, quote unquote, that were not really his, but the armor changes helped him a lot.
Winston has, at least had a significant damage increase, particularly against armor. So we are seeing teams running a lot more of that Winston variety of goats, shred for the ammo a little bit quicker. But I think one of the most interesting things to me that we've started seeing in the Overwatch League, and I think we will see, knowing what some of these teams like to run, is the return of Doomfist.
Yeah.
Not the carry he used to be, but Doomfist has become a very strong pick against these Winston goats. And again, that's going to play into a couple teams' hands. T1W most in particular, because we know Micha.
Yeah.
He's famous for this Doomfist. We're talking Sparkle, Daned levels of what he can do on that hero. So I think that we talk about T1W being the strongest team coming out of groups. I think maybe they're only going to increase that gap moving into playoffs if we're going to see these changes coming through.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, is this the patch where Doomfist got his buffs, kind of? They buffed the cooldown, I think, on Seismic Slam and on Punch, I believe.
A little bit.
So it's like went from 7 seconds to 6 seconds, I think, for both of them.
2 of his cooldowns got brought down by a second, which isn't a huge difference.
Yeah.
But it does make it a
helps.
little bit easier for
it'll help, and we saw, even in Next when T1W was playing and they played their DPS compositions, we did see Micha. He did bring out the Doomfist. It looks, doesn't look like it missed a beat at all. So if, we go into playoffs and we see this T1W side bring out this Doomfist, we haven't seen it a lot. We saw it last season, but some of these teams, might not be ready for it, and that's something that they can probably use to, exploit. And, again, their side of the bracket is pretty it's pretty mediocre compared to the other side. I think the other side is much stronger, but their road to the grand finals is pretty easy. And I think if they want to use Doomfist and maybe just test them out or just like hold it until grand finals, I think they can definitely do that.
It will be pretty interesting to see what they bring out. Like I mentioned before, I think they're the more complete team. They have multiple different strategies on maps that they are pretty adept at running. proficient would be a strong word, but they have a lot of different looks that they can throw you. I would be a little scared if we see them run a lot of Doomfist, because if we kind of look at some foreshadowing, when they actually get to the final, which I don't think they have to work too terribly hard to get there, I wonder how much that stylistic matchup plays into them actually running Doomfist, if that makes sense. So if T1W leans on this Doomfist really hard, and they're playing a team that leans on a Sombra really hard, I think that makes it pretty difficult for T1W to get things done. Obviously, if you kind of, extrapolate for a moment, if I have a Doomfist and I get hacked, not a lot I can do, right? That doesn't stop them from running any other strategies, but I worry if they kind of all in, like, oh wow, we can play Doomfist again, awesome, let's just coast through and play Doomfist and practice that, and that's what we're going to throw LGE with. I don't think that's going to happen, but could be a thing.
I imagine maybe the best path for T1W would be to go the complete opposite direction. Just commit to running goats.
Yeah, I think
throughout the first two matches, because I think looking at their matchups, they've got Lucky Future and then the winner of
Don't need
LGD
to
versus
show
Flag.
too much there. Sure.
Yeah, I think you can just commit to running the more simple strategies just to go, and then maybe pull out the Doomfist for grand finals if you feel like that's going to be strong. I feel like you are right that committing to the Doomfist early on, maybe not the best move for T1W, but Micha, every time last season we said they were relying on the Doomfist, Micha kept proving us wrong, and they did pull out a very strong standard goats at the end of the season. Obviously, it's a different patch and things have changed, but
I think for the most part, people have kind of caught up. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't been all that high on his Zarya this season. I think last season it was serviceable, but like now
he's had a lot of mistakes. It's.
I think it's still serviceable, but everyone else has taken that step forward. So he's looking a bit worse.
He's playing more support Zarya, I think, than anything.
It's both people taking a step forward and teams recognizing that Micha isn't the super carry superstar Doomfist anymore. He's the serviceable Zarya, and he's a weak point they can start exploiting, which does make him look worse.
And with more new picks coming in, we do have Baptiste going to be available in the playoffs. We've seen the rise of the bunker composition with more cheesy comps with the Rissa, the Bastion, the Torb. Kenobi, do you think that those types of comps might also be seen in playoffs? Could that cause a surprise? What do you anticipate?
I think you could possibly see something like Baptiste, China in season 2, that there was one team, and I think you'll know, it was Moss 7 Club, and it was Ameng who actually was the first one to play Wrecking Ball. So there are teams that can maybe just decide, this is a new hero, we want to play it right away. I don't expect them to play Baptiste that much. Maybe it's going to be very map dependent if he gets played at all, but I think they're going to mostly stick to what they know, stick to what they've been playing throughout these stages. We don't know what's happening in like preparations and scrims, but I would say T1W sticks towards more of what they've been playing, just playing regular goats or playing DPS compositions. I don't expect LGE to switch really towards any Baptiste compositions. Maybe some of the lower teams like Lucky Future, like maybe to throw a wrench.
Kenobi.
Yes.
There was a pretty good support hero that was added last season. Impacted the meta, some might say. Couple very vocal Overwatch League players
don't like
very much love their Brigitte. And China was I'd say late to the party.
Yes.
Is a nice way to put it.
We saw a similar thing when Hanzo came through as well.
Definitely. The new Hanzo, Stormbow Hanzo.
And everyone was talking about how dominant and how overpowered Hanzo was, and China was quite slow to react to that as well.
Mm-hmm. And even when they played Brigitte, it wasn't like the Brigitte that like everyone else was playing. It was kind of their own version of it. Like they took a little bit while to get Brigitte into the meta, and then they took a little bit while to like adapt her to their own meta. So I think you're right. I think they I don't know.
I don't know that they're gonna be super willing to just. You might have, like I said, like you mentioned, like Ameng with Wrecking Ball. You might have some team. Maybe
just a team. Lucky Future or like something like that.
Name a team that has like a mechanically proficient brig. I'm sure it exists. I just can't.
I think a team that I would like to see in that regard is Billy Billy.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Billy aren't in a weak position.
Like they
They
could be the
aren't like one of these teams that kind of has nothing else to play for.
You put Yakumo on.
Yeah. I think maybe you put Yakumo on that. Maybe you quickly teach Yakumo Zaya and have Shai, the former flex support, pick up the Baptiste.
Maybe.
I feel like
maybe
that could be. Yeah, I think that maybe Billy could be the best place to pull out the Baptiste strategy, because they know that they're going to be at least close to LGE, but maybe they need something extra, something unexpected to push them over the top.
And Volamel, what you mentioned that China is kind of slower to adapt to these new heroes. Do you have any idea why that might be?
I'd imagine, if I had to guess, like, again, this is a very educated, probably not super educated, but the East, for the most part, has been pretty stubborn in their ways. They kind of just stick to what they know for the most part, and that is kind of echoed through the absence of goats for a long time, especially in China.
I had it explained to me pretty well a while ago that it's a different mentality. In NA and in EU, we see the meta and our automatic response is, what's the best way to beat the meta? Whereas in China, in Korea, it's how can we be as good at the meta as we can.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a thing that also transcends like esports titles, right? In like China and Korea, I think, you know, for China specifically, I think they've always, in like, you know, League of Legends, for instance, they've always had their own style of way of doing things and their own meta.
It's definitely an own regional meta, but it's get as good at that meta as you can, get as good as your way of playing the game as you can, not looking to counter, which means it can be. When a meta has been established for a while, we certainly see these Korean teams at least being so dominant because they work so hard on being the best that can at the meta. But when these meta changes come through, I feel like the West is quicker to react to the meta changes because we already have the mentality of we want to counter the meta, we want to come up with new stuff.
And that kind of goes into... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, it goes into the discussion of, you know, Europe's very good at goats. That's kind of what they're known for. Sure. And we've been hearing from many people the debate between British Hurricane... Runaway.
Oh, I can't escape it, man.
The can of worms.
It's walking back a little bit dangerously here with Volamel, but no,
I don't mind.
Do you think? I know we're kind of diverging a little bit from Chinese Overwatch. We'll
come
right back. But do you really think that moving forward, as we get closer and closer to the gauntlet, do you think this countering strategy would work? Or as Vowels, you were saying, kind of sticking to what you know and really becoming perfect at it? Who's going to come out on top in the gauntlet? Is it going to be a Western team? An Eastern team?
It depends. There's so much that goes into it. Yeah.
That's true. It's a long way away.
Yeah. So for Showdown, I would say...
Looking at the Showdowns, maybe we can judge that a bit better because it's most likely going to be the same patch. Similar to what we're seeing. I think Gauntlet is a little bit far ahead.
Yeah.
Although I do want to see the fallout when LGU beats Runaway just running Sombra Goats and Haker is crowned as the new Faker.
So I think
it would be actually beautiful for me.
Yeah, I mean, we're all touting Haker as like this, probably like arguably like one of, if not the best Sombra in the world. And I think when LGE gets to Showdown, I think they, again, we talked about it earlier, I think they do have the best chance out of all the teams. T1W, I think if they go in and they run Goats, it's going to be a really bad time because you're going up against, you know, Runaway, who's a pretty good Goats team above all.
Funnily enough.
And I think they just get... you know, they get mopped if they go up against the Goats of Runaway. But I think LG has this, like, kind of just little piece in their toolkit, this guy called Haker and the team around him, and I think they're very good, and I think this is something that I don't think a lot of people have seen, just this way of playing Sombra. I think there have been people who have played it, and I know Volamel like mentioned him, like RCK is like another person who kind of plays along the same way as Haker does. But
they do a very, at least Haker individually does something that and again, this could be my ignorance that I haven't like studied Sombra all that much, but instead of going for very lengthy translocators, they almost use it doubly so as a movement ability more often than not, where they're looking to like short hop.
Yeah.
Either into fights or into positions, or sometimes they like hurl a 90-degree translocator, go for like a hack, and on the way down they go for an EMP, which I thought has been really cool to see. I think that tech is slowly being developed. There was somebody on Angry Titans, forgive me, that posted a clip, and there was an essence of it there. And I think these players like RCK, like Haker, they are kind of leading this slightly different stylistic change up. But
it's used to make the comparison. It's using translocator as a blink, not a recall.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a movement ability.
Exactly.
More than just a.
But they pepper it in. It's not like, oh, this is only how I use it. It's not like a pattern. It's in this situation I decide to use it this way. In other situations I decide to use it another way.
The mix-ups.
Definitely the mix-ups, but I want to see more of that from LGE. I think we're starting to really see some very interesting gear shifting, some different ways to play Sombra Goats. GC Busan in Korea, their way of playing Sombra is very frontline focused and very spacing oriented, that I think LGE could really take a page from and learn all the different ways you can play Sombra, because they are very one-dimensional. We've seen exactly one look from them, and that's Sombra. That's it. So you need to be able to throw different kinds of where are we putting our bubbles? Where are we putting our impacts? Where are we putting our Sombra? Is she in the front line? Is she in the back line? Are we playing a little bit more passive? Are we trying to set up, EMP shatters? Are we looking to hack people instead of building the quickest EMP possible, et cetera, et cetera? Like, you can't just have one look, especially against teams like Runaway, especially, against, some of the best, Pacific talent out there. People are going to be scouting you at these showdown events, and you just can't be as rigid. So I want to say that they're going to do well, but if they can't start to change things up and add a little bit more to their repertoire, I have my reservations. I have some worries.
Certainly. I do think you're right in that you can't just run in just running one kind of thing. But where we've seen that kind of play style historically succeed, where going back to T1W Season 3, where maybe you don't want tricky composition, they did mix things up a little bit. You rely heavily on a single composition. It can often come down to one player just having that mechanical ability. We saw it with Micha. Maybe they can pull off the same thing with Haker, but I do think you're right there. I would like to see some different looks from LG Huya.
There are some things also that LG Huya, I think, they make some mistakes from time to time with their play, and again, with a composition like that with Sombra Goats, especially if the mistakes are coming from the person who's using the EMP, I think that's basically disastrous, because you're just throwing away your win condition for nothing. Like, there are times where, Haker usually gets 6-man EMP, but if he's getting a 6-man EMP and there's no follow-up, then you're kind of screwed, right? And there are times where, ultimates and communication just don't look like it's the cleanest from LGE, and that's kind of why we have reservations about them winning the whole thing, is because if T1W does anything, they make less mistakes usually than anyone else. And I think that's something that, not only that, but they can also punish people who are making mistakes. If LGE continues to make these mistakes, I think T1W is a team who's very good at saying, okay, well, we're a very tight ship. If you're going to make any of these mistakes, we're going to punish you for them. And I think that's something that LG really needs to look out for, is like they need to tighten up their mistakes, because if they do that, I think they have a much better chance of beating T1W. If not, then I think T1W kind of takes this 4-1 in the grand finals.
I think LGD Huya coming to the season was maybe the most surprising team for me. I wasn't a fan of some of the changes they made over the off-season. I felt they looked strongest at the end of last season when they brought in Tian and Asian on that Diva and Zaya. They were suddenly able to actually finish targets. Asian was infinitely better on Zaya than whoever they'd had before. They were actually able to get something done, and they started picking up a bit towards the end. I felt like when they made those changes in the offseason where they lost those players, they brought in Haker, they brought in Piggy, they brought in J-Mac as a new main tank. I wasn't a fan. I didn't have high expectations, and I feel they've kind of been able to ride the wave of Haker being so good at Sombra.
Yeah.
But I do have my questions about how they're going to mix things up.
Yeah.
I feel like their goats wasn't great last season. Aside from bringing on the Haker, they haven't made any.
Dude, their goats was so bad.
Yeah, it was better than it was.
It looked better towards the end when they brought on those new signings like Tiana.
Yeah, but their main tank fed.
Yeah, it was better, but the bar wasn't set very high to begin with. So.
Exactly. So yeah. I'm ready to be proven wrong again.
Yeah, they do have like other looks though.
Move away from that Sombra look.
Yeah. They do have other looks, and they played them like very, very sparingly. Like
it's mostly on control. Yeah, it's I've noticed that they throw out like a Farah for Kami.
Yeah.
Bless.
Thank you.
And I think that's something that maybe I want to see more of on certain maps. Like I think that's good because then you have Kami who isn't like I don't know.
What maps do you want him to run it on? Like you could maybe run it on like I think we've seen it on Ike defense. I mean, yeah, you see it again on control, but like how many other game types are you really going to be able to run like a Farah on these days? Like some hybrid maps you might be able to try and force it. Is it worth it because you're immediately going to be playing into goats, which is just so good once the payload kind of unlocks. I mean, 2CP can be a little wonky, especially in China. Like Volskaya has been a historical map where you get some quad DPS sometimes. You get, I mean, even in Europe, you know, Hurricane's throwing out some Ashe Sombra comps on A defense that, again, it can point you in that direction. Is T1 or is LGE the team that's going to be throwing the different looks? I hope so, but I don't know.
The thing with LGE for me is that this is never a team like that they're gonna ever. I don't think they'll ever full hold, right? And if they do, it's against a team that's because they always play Sombra like in the back, like on defense. They very rarely full hold people. Like they didn't do it at Next. Throughout the season, they
got pretty close.
They got close, but again, it's like Sombra defense is very difficult to like on payload map or on not on payload. Yeah, on payload maps and on hybrid, I think it's very difficult to run Sombra on defense. Especially because I think if you run Sombra on defense, you have to really just play slow. And once they scout at the Sombra, I think it's very easy for the offensive team to play more aggressive, and then you just lose point very quickly. I think that happened actually when they played T1W, where T1W saw that Haker's not there, they just bomb rush the point and they win very quickly. And I think with this team, it's always like they're one fight away from winning or from snowballing very hard. Like you get that one EMP from Haker and you can cheat your ultimate economy basically, where you get that EMP, everyone else now has ultimate abilities and the other team doesn't have theirs. So I think this team is very scary in that regard, is that you have to play on your game for basically the entire map, or you lose one fight and the map just like ends because they just snowball off of their ultimate economy.
So we're definitely going to be seeing whether or not that Sombra Goats will end up working out first immediately in these Chinese Contenders players that are starting up this weekend. So we're excited to support Kenobi with that. But before we kind of wrap up, I kind of wanted, really quick, I was looking it up. How many teams make it from Pacific Showdown to Gauntlet? Do you know?
If you win, you get one more position in Gauntlet, I believe is the...
Okay.
I believe is what it is.
Yeah, whatever region wins the event, that region gets one extra additional slot for the Gauntlet. Okay. And I'm not entirely too sure how many slots are going to be available just let alone.
Yeah.
But we know that region will have an extra one, so that's going to be very beneficial for teams to do very, very well there. And what isn't great is that the 5th and 6th place teams are going to lose an invitation to the Gauntlet, which sucks.
Yeah. So if I wonder if China gets like 5th and 6th and then they win in the hypothetical world, do they just go even, and do they just like you get one and you lose one? I wonder if that's how it works.
I'd imagine that's how that works. But that kind of sucks because there's just like
then nobody wins.
One invitation that just ain't gonna be there. So maybe that's not how I don't know. I really don't know how it works. Again, I live in a very perpetual state of idiocy. So your guess is as good as mine, Kenobes.
Regardless of what happens, though, there is definitely still extremely high stakes for the Chinese Contenders teams.
Imagine the uproar when Korea gets 5 and 6 at a Pacific Showdown.
And China gets 1 and 2.
And I thought I had a hot take.
But what are the chances, though, do you think, of a Chinese team taking second place? Is there a chance?
Oh, that's I have a bet with Made, I think, for $25 that Chinese team gets to the grand finals of that showdown.
Oh, shit.
I think it depends. Like, there's a good chance that they can. There's a good chance that China can go pretty deep, but
if I had to put a percent,
it depends.
I would say like 65% chance that they get second.
Wow, that's really high.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the Korean teams either.
And it has to be LG. It has to be LG. I'd like T1W. I don't think goes that far. I think it's going to be LGE just because I don't know. I think they're just...
I don't know. I think T1W can do well against like most of the Korean teams.
But
I think mutual work is magic.
You think so?
Michu will find a way.
If Doom is viable, and like much more so than he is in the current, like if T1W finds a way to like have this, Michu doesn't have to play Zarya anymore basically, which is their biggest weakness at the moment, and he can play Doom for the majority of the time, then I think T1W definitely has a much better chance because his Zarya is not, as we've said, like the best. He flip-flops from support Zarya to carry Doomfist. If he's more carry Doomfist, T1W has a much better chance.
Yeah, if they can and want to play Doomfist, which I think we'll be seeing in a couple hours. Well, by a couple, I mean like 5 or 7 as of recording. I believe the last match in Korea is going to be Element Mystic Runaway. And that's going to be a rematch of last year?
Yep.
Last season. Element Mystic Runaway, the big
100%
Doomfist.
Element Mystic.
Yeah, big absolute blunder that was. That's what you get for polling people. You might see it there. You might see... I'm interested to see what Runaway does against it. They should know what to do.
They did in the Season 3 finals, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how that... I don't know if the skill vampires just come on over and just, somehow peel the memory from their noggins, but I've seen stranger things. I've seen Atlanta beat NYXL, so
Exactly. I was about to say, speaking of strange things there, we might even see a Chinese team make it to the Stage 2 playoffs. So as we wrap up tonight, I would like each of you to make one quick prediction.
Okay.
Will a team make Stage 2 playoffs that is Chinese?
Yes.
Yes, Chengdu is going to make it.
And I know some of you have already said, which team will make it to the gauntlet if a Chinese team makes it?
God. The gauntlet?
To the gauntlet?
Billy. I think Billy get it together and make it to the gauntlet.
I don't hate that. Because Billy I think is like...
I think on paper, Billy looks like...
This is so not on brand for you.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's not T1W. It's not T1W.
My heart has been stolen by a main tank called Over.
He's pretty good.
Friendship canceled with Silver 3. Over is my new best friend. I mean, I don't hate Billy as a shout. They have a absolutely stacked lineup. Should do very well in most metas. I think that if given enough time, their goats will seriously improve.
Mm-hmm.
Some miscoordination, but that's to be expected. It's tier 2. People are gonna make mistakes, but theirs are a little bit more glaring.
I don't want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say LGE because I like Blizzard we could just see like a patch that just like guts Sombra and then like that team has to make some decisions.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Haker play literally anything else.
I think he has 100% unless like there's some like stall tactics.
He might have played some weird stuff.
Oh, he played.
OD.
Okay, here's the one time he didn't play it. He played Widow on Blizzard World to scout or something like that. I don't know. Like he went outside of spawn, shot around. With
he literally like grapples up, looks.
There we go.
Yeah,
and then that's it. That's the only other character he's played. But then it's pretty much just.
I really don't know if I've ever seen him play anything else but Sombra, and that's a little worrying.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. They do have somebody else, do they not? ATD? Am I misremembering?
I mean, they have Kami, and Kami's okay.
I mean, yes, they have Kami. Kami always plays, but I'm asking if they have like a sub. Yeah, they have this ATD, Korean DPS, ATD.
Who is new, I believe.
I don't know who that is. Yeah. Never heard of him in my life. I'd love to see what he has, because maybe Haker gets subbed out. Maybe, ATD plays something a little bit more standard in terms of Diva, maybe. I don't know.
Or Haker just is like Micha and just says, learn something else. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, there's going to be a lot of maybes coming up in the next few months as we do continue that build up to Pacific Showdown, Gauntlet, etc. next. But for now, I think we have predicted as much as we can. And in the next few weeks, we might even have some Overwatch League playoffs to discuss on China Talk.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But for now, I'd like to thank you all, and thank you again to Vowels for toughing it out and defeating his computer. And thank you all at home who were joining us. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and please watch some Chinese Contenders. It's going to be absolutely brilliant, and we hope to see you next time on China Talk. So good night, everybody. Thank you.